Dit is Ergens Oog Radio.
Een andere kijk op de wereld.
Dit is Ergens Oog Radio.
Een andere kijk op de wereld.
You're listening to Pateo Radio.
Thank you for listening to Pateo Radio. My name is Johan Oldenkamp and I'm the host of this radio talk show. Before I introduce my special guest of tonight, I will make a short personal announcement. That is because I have joined politics. So don't be scared because it is not what it might seem. I'm now the party leader of a movement that wants to bring democracy back into the Netherlands. And for that I'm occupied a lot with this new movement. For more information, please visit my website, pateo.nl. Okay, now let's go to our guest of tonight. The time difference between here and our guest is 10 hours, because the guest is coming from New Zealand and he is 10 hours ahead of us. And the guest is Troy McLachlan. Troy, welcome to the show.
Johan, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, I'm really sorry that last time it didn't went well, but that was my mistake. I'm really happy that you're now live in the audience.
Oh no, it's good.
Yeah,
it's great to be able to come and chat with you.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate it a lot because it's really early there. It's 6 o'clock in the morning, if I'm correct, for you. For
That's
me,
correct.
For me it's 8 o'clock in the evening. So it's already Tuesday on your agenda. Mine is still Monday, 28. Okay. Troy, can you shortly introduce yourself to the listeners? What is your background? What kind of person are you?
Well, I'm basically a New Zealander. I was brought up in New Zealand. I'm a British citizen, but brought up in New Zealand. I'm the author of The Saturn Death Cult, which is a website and an e-book that discusses a new cosmology that involves an ancient relationship between the planet Saturn and Earth as it is expressed in mythology, and goes on to discuss this cosmology in terms of what's called the electric universe model, but also looks at the implications for the belief systems of various malevolent cults, religions, and elite agendas that are based on a very archaic understanding of Saturn worship. And so basically it's a book that, and a website that challenges the uniformitarian understanding of our, solar system's history and provides a very different, idea for the origins of the Earth. And actually for the origins of human history, written history in particular, and basically goes on to discuss how the Saturn type symbols and archetypes that evolved from this mythological period when Earth and Saturn enjoyed this relationship, which I'm sure we'll discuss in detail, how this particular relationship and its archetypes and symbols have been appropriated by these various elite interests and groups, basically to establish a debt-based slavery control monetary system that is for the benefit of the small elite and to the exclusion of the rest of us.
Exactly. Okay, thank you very much, Troy, because you also give a kind of table of contents of this radio talk, but that's great. My suggestion is that we talk about first half hour about Saturn and the cosmology, and then we can talk in the second half about what this knowledge has done to the the powers that be or the powers that try to be, and how they use it. So I prefer to start with the planet of Saturn. Okay. Also, the work of Emanuel Velikovsky is also talking about that in a not all too far away past, the planet of Saturn used to be our sun instead of the sun we now have called Helios. Can you explain in words how that would have been on Earth?
Yes. Well, Velikovsky, you bring him up. He is you would call him the grandfather of the Saturn theory idea. We've moved on a lot from his particular type of cosmology, but he was the first person who postulated this idea that Saturn was Earth's original sun. And it was in an unpublished paper which influenced two of the greatest exponents of this theory, that is David Talbot in the United States and a Maltese gentleman called Eduardo Cardona, who I believe lives in Canada now. And they've gone on to refine Velikovsky's ideas. And largely I'm influenced very much by both these men, and particularly by Eduardo Cardona. And basically, to give your audience an idea of what the theory rests upon, I'll quote from Cardona because I think he said it best. And I quote, "The evidence of myth which points to Saturn having once occupied a position above Earth's north polar regions is voluminous. There is not a race on Earth that has not preserved at least one account which states as much. According to this evidence, Saturn occupied a central position in the north celestial regions. It rotated and rotated widely, but other than that, it was immovable." End of quote. Now, essentially what we're talking about is an ancient past when the inhabitants of this Earth, when they looked up into the skies, it was a very, very different set of skies to the ones that we see today. And primary to that is this idea that where the North Pole Star, what we call a pole star today, exists, that part of the sky that doesn't seem to move because of our rotation, that was where the actual planet of Saturn used to reside. And it basically existed there in two different phases. One in what we call the purple dawn of creation, and then during what we call a golden age, when it flared and became very sun-like. And then it eventually lost its position in that realm and was banished to the outer parts of the solar system where we see it today. But myth is unequivocal in its statement that Saturn was in that position at some point in its past.
Yeah, but when we look at there is a lot of recording from human recording of this planet being exactly at the north. So it's on a throne. It's standing still. It's very powerful. You can only see it from the northern hemisphere, of course. But to my understanding, for about 200,000 years now, there are human beings on this planet, more or less. So does it mean that it has been less than 200,000 years ago that Saturn used to be our primal sun? Is that a correct?
Well, in a nutshell, I would put Saturn as going back, I'm perfectly willing to entertain billions of years in that configuration. The key to understanding where Saturn becomes the reigning god of what we would call the golden age of mythology is to give it basically a date line, probably between 10 and 15,000 years ago. Saturn changed from being a very dull orb that radiated more energy than light, and it flared as a result of coming into contact with our current sun. And this goes to the electric universe model of how celestial bodies interact with each other. And in that process, this is what we call the let there be light moment. And for a few thousand years, it maintained that position until it fell in a cataclysmic episode that has come down and basically been indelibly stamped on the minds of the human species as doomsday. This is an archetype that is at the root. It's it is central to our paranoias. It's it's the boogeyman from time immemorial, and this event saw Saturn pushed away and literally replaced by the current sun, which has an east to west rising and setting, as opposed to staying stationary up in the pole. But prior to its flare-up, you could put any amount of time going back into the past for this existence. The Earth, was placed under Saturn when it was basically a sub-brown dwarf star. And this, of course, is the absolutely radical cosmology that I referred to. The idea that Saturn was originally a sub-brown dwarf star that was captured along with its satellites by the sun within recorded human history, within the last 15,000 years. And basically the capturing process was the trauma that not only caused doomsday to become a part of our psyche as a species, but also launched civilization.
Exactly. So, am I correct by saying that one of the satellites was of Helios was the planet next to Saturn, of course, Jupiter, and that Jupiter was the one that was was able to throw his father from the throne. So that's the ancient mythology from the Greek civilization, and then Zeus is of course Jupiter, and he kicked his father from the throne, so to say. So can we conclude that, for instance, Saturn was our first sun, and then Jupiter became our second sun, and then there were two more suns, and then finally the current sun is the fifth sun, like the Mayan or the Hopi prophecy says. Is that is that correct, Troy?
I would go with Saturn replaced very briefly by Jupiter, and Jupiter reigning brightly for a period of time before Helios, or the sun as we know it today, really filled the daytime sky and became our main source of light. As far as the intermediary period between Jupiter, this was a very chaotic period of the settling down that took place when you look at the planets that were involved with Saturn, which I named to be Earth and Mars in particular, hanging below Saturn, with Mars between Earth and Saturn. Venus came into being as a result of Saturn's flaring up and was ejected southwards from Saturn at that time. And once we came into the influence of the Sun, Jupiter made its approach, being an existing satellite of the Sun, and the conflict, as you rightly described there, the conflict between Zeus and his father Kronos, or Saturn, is basically what we have in the mythological record. And then from that chaotic conflict, of course, you get the very erratic orbits of Venus and Mars, which caused untold damage to the Earth, so that I can't remember which particular Greek philosopher said, but it is via comets that kingdoms rise and fall, and he was referring to planets that were literally acting like comets at that time when they were rearranging themselves into the current orbits that we see.
Yeah, because Venus is mostly compared to Aphrodite in the Greek mythology, but also to Medusa, and Medusa is a very destructive force. So so you also describe it on your website, of course, at SaturnDeathCult.com. But I think that most of the Greek mythology is just trying to explain everything that happened in that period. in which Saturn was Cronus was confronted, or Saturn was confronted with the new sun and the satellites and all the occurrences that resulted from that. Is that also the way you see it, Troy?
Yes, you make two very relevant points to understanding what was going on in the ancient mind in relation to how we see it today. We, in the modern world, tend to look on mythology. We tend to equate mythology with fiction. It's like it's a synonym, the two words, but in fact, that's not what it was actually seen like with the ancients. They had fiction, but their mythology was a completely different account of things that they saw around them. And one of the things that we see when we read mythology from the viewpoint that it's just fiction, we've got this barbaric madhouse of events going on. We make films about it and so on, but gods fighting all over the place and general chaos. But if you take this particular cosmology, what's actually being reported are celestial observations in a very chaotic sky. It's basically the cosmology of catastrophism, and yes, in such a case, this is why Aphrodite can transform into Medusa. At one moment, the beautiful looking planet, at the next, a planet that's threatening destruction in the most hideous way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and there was a second. Sorry, Johan, there was a second point that you made there as well, which aside from the mythology being not seen as fiction but as a record, you get the idea that basically it is a record of celestial events that have been bequeathed to us in these generations, and because we are now looking at the world with the uniformitarian approach, the idea that nature has basically been as it is for millions of years and hasn't changed except very, very slowly and imperceptibly. We just cannot equate what they saw in the skies with what we see today, and therefore we dismiss it.
Yeah, and that is all based on the whole idea that everything is connected to gravity, that gravity is the main force in the universe. And that's why it's very important, I think, for the listeners who have not heard about the electric universe theory to do some research about it. Because if in fact electricity is the by far most greatest power in the universe, then by changing, for instance, the differences, the potential difference, I don't know exactly the right wording in English, then you can easily change.
That's correct.
Yeah, can easily change the whole configuration of a solar system. But because I think the critics from the universities at this moment to all of this is that it's totally nonsense, because the gravity is not allowing such radical changes in any solar system. So can you elaborate? Can you explain a little bit about the electric universe theory and how dynamic it in fact is, and how rapid things can change based on this new understanding of the universe?
Certainly. What one of the best ways to start for people who are probably new to this is to actually first of all look at the mainstream view of what the universe is. And as you've rightly pointed out, they believe in what's called a gravity-only driven universe. Now, the trouble with that is that what they do is they apply Newtonian mechanics from Isaac Newton's theories, and then they move up towards Einstein's relativity theories and so on. But something terrible happened along the way. The observable physical universe that we see simply does not explain, when you calculate all the gravitational potential according to these theories, it does not explain how it actually holds together in the way that we see it. So the first thing that was introduced into the gravity-driven model was the idea of black holes at the center of galaxies.
Galaxies, yes.
And Yeah, and when you understand that the only reason that black holes exist is not because we've actually seen it, not because we've actually measured it or anything along those lines. It's there because the mathematics don't work in a gravity-driven only model of the universe when you calculate all the observable matter in the known universe. And so they had to find extra gravity to hold it all together. So essentially, black holes become a construct of mathematical theory and not through observable or experimental science. And of course, even black holes don't explain in the end how it all holds together. So they developed a thing called dark matter, and they tell us that dark matter is 97% of the universe, but you would think that any probe you sent out into space would bump into this stuff at some point. But at the end of the day, that is why the stuff exists. What the electric universe says is that, in fact, stars that we see, all those bright lights out in the sky, are basically electrical discharge phenomena, and that there are currents that flow through through the galaxies between stars and even between galaxies, and that the medium that they are conducted, these electrical currents, is a substance called plasma. Mm-hmm. And this plasma connects all these stars together in a huge network of electrical current activity, not unlike the city lights in a major city. And basically, this flow of electricity manifests itself in these discharge phenomena that we call stars. And then the electricity itself also then, so taking our sun, our own sun and solar system, this electrical circuit, giant galactic electric circuit, some of it flows in through our sun, out through our sun, into the planets that circle that sun, including our own. And through these electrical currents, you get the magnetic fields that we know exist, in the around celestial bodies, particularly Earth's magnetic field. And one of the key things that people must remember about the electric universe model and magnetism and so on, in the gravity-driven model, basically planets are inert, neutral lumps of rock circling around the sun. In the electric universe model, the magnetism is produced by the electrical current that connects us to the sun, and that's why it exists. You cannot have magnetism, you cannot have a magnetic field without an electrical input in the first place. And mainstream science has been trying so long now to try and explain how the Earth self-generates its magnetic field. They've this dynamo theory idea that they just can't quite demonstrate to be true. Whereas the electric universe says it's simple. Electricity flows into our sun from the rest of the galaxy and out of our sun into the Earth, and it completes a circuit. And the enormity of that and the power of that basically dwarfs the concept of gravity. Gravity plays a part, but it is subject to the greater power of electricity, and not the other way around.
Yes, fantastic, Troy. Thank you for explaining this so precisely. To me, the truth is in simplicity, and the electric universe theory is in fact so simple to understand, and it's so powerful in explaining all the phenomena which the ancient university theories are not able to explain. So I really don't understand why they're so stubborn. Continue, please.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we find in modern science is when they get these reports back from all the probes that we send out, they're constantly surprised by everything. Whereas anybody who wants to take the time can go into thunderbolts.info, and you can see that the electric universe model has a fantastic record in one area that science should be judged on, and that is the ability to predict. And the predictive capacity of the electric universe model has been phenomenal. in basically being able to explain the various phenomena that we see. And the indictment on the current state of mainstream science is that it would seem to me that an electrical engineer is far more qualified to interpret astronomical data than today's modern astrophysicists and astronomers. And that's because electric engineers and so on deal with actual experimental activity. They're able to scale up and down from the lab the effects that can be seen, can be observed out in space, whereas astronomers have really convinced us all that it's different here on Earth to what it is out in space. The electric universe, there's no way. It's just a scaled up, the principles are the same.
Great. Okay, we'll come back to this later, Troy. I would like to make now the step to talk about people who use this kind of ancient knowledge to somehow control this planet or do kind of ceremonies or try to copy what has been done in the past by the gods, the planets, I mean. Mm-hmm. Because most of your website is also about that, you can say dark part and the whole death cult around Saturn.
Sure.
So,
yes.
Please try not to scare the listeners too much, but can you share some of the insights, Troy?
Yes, certainly. When I did the website, I basically was putting together a Saturn theory website, but I called it Saturn Death Cult. I knew it would have a certain lurid appeal to some people and so on. And as we all know, with the popularity of Dan Brown's books and, talk about outfits like the Illuminati and that, there is people out there who have a interest in the idea that somehow societies are manipulated by small elites, driven by their own agendas for control. What Saturn Death Cult tries to do is introduce the reader to what actually turns out to be a very basic idea of greed, as opposed to the all-encompassing, sort of diabolical world villain that's controlling the world from some sort of secret headquarters. And in that way, I'll take your listeners back to what exactly happened when Saturn was Earth's original sun. Mm-hmm. And it's crucial that the readers understand that much of the archetypes that make up what's our basic psyche. It doesn't matter what race, it doesn't matter what culture we come from, what language we speak. We all share these similar archetypes, and every single one of them, without fail, has its origins in what would be called the Golden Age of mythology. That is the hero warrior, the Earth Mother Goddess, the father, the very, the dangerous child-consuming father, and of course, as I mentioned earlier, on Doomsday. Now,
all subconsciously.
In going back to yes, totally. It's basically what it is. There is you have these subconscious thoughts, mm-hmm. and the way that you trigger these subconscious thoughts is through symbols. All right, and this is where the key to Saturn worship comes into the equation and understanding what was going on. It also, if you understand this cosmology, it effectively undermines somebody's ability to control you with these symbols that basically prey on these archetypes that you have in your subconscious. And you're able to rationalize rather than react at a subconscious level to this. Now, what I'm postulating in Saturn Death Cult is that for centuries, certain people have learned to use the symbols that have come out of the Golden Age as a way of manipulating the vast majority of human beings on this planet to their own ends. The question is, why would they do that? And we'll get to that. But as far as their ability to use these symbols, they know of these symbols, but what I'm also postulating is they don't know the origins of it, and that's what the cosmology gives us this tool to be able to basically rationalize what happened back at that time. Just recapping, Saturn was a sub-brown dwarf star. It, as a result of that, and what I should say, Johan, if you just indulge me on this one, I'll just go a little bit back to what is happening in our universe even today.
Okay,
and that
great.
is that we can see lots of stars around us, but what a lot of people do not understand is that the majority of stars out there cannot be seen. All right, it's been postulated that we have billions of these brown dwarfs and blue dwarfs and so on. Now, these stars emit a lot of energy, but they emit very little light because some of them only have a 700-degree heat source and so on. But they can, so optical observation equipment, telescopes, your naked eye, you can't pick these particular celestial objects out. However, X-rays, radio telescopes, these kinds of tools that we've developed in the last 100 years are actually able to pick these objects out. And what's happening is that people are seeing what is believed to be giant rogue planets, free-floating planets that are out there. The electric universe says that what they're actually seeing is the plasma bubble or the plasma sheath that surrounds a solid star that is in the middle. Now think of it like the star is the yolk inside of an egg, and the shell is this plasma bubble that surrounds the yolk, and between the yolk and the shell you have a cavity, and in that cavity you can have planets that orbit that solid star in the middle. Now, this sounds preposterous to a lot of people, but in fact, that's exactly what our solar system is that we have. But because our sun is a red giant, our bubble is transparent. It's called the heliosphere. It's this giant, enormous bubble way beyond Pluto that basically encapsulates our solar system inside it, and all the planets that we have in the solar system exist between the sun and this. So sub-brown dwarfs have exactly the same setup, except that their bubble is opaque. You can't see through it, and so it looks like a gas giant thing, but it's probably more likely that there's this cavity in there. And of course, people like Wallace Thornhill say that this is where we should be directing our views if we want to look for extraterrestrial life, is probably into the inside of these plasma sheaths of our sub-brown dwarf stars. Now, we're postulating that Saturn, Earth, and Mars were exactly this scenario, a sub-brown dwarf star that drifted into the influence of the sun, and when Saturn's bubble touched the bubble of the Earth, the bubble of the sun, the heliosphere of the sun, there was an electrical reaction that caused that sub-brown dwarf star to not supernova, to go nova-like. It flared up, it became bright, and as a result of that, the opaque plasma sheath disappeared. Now, in mythology, you can take the biblical, which is the one that most people are familiar with. This is what researchers in this field call the "Let there be light" moment, and that it marks actually the beginning of what you call the Golden Age. Now, at that point in time when this happens, human life on the planet suddenly became very aware of what was going on in the skies, whereas before it had just been a chaotic, opaque, looked like an ocean up in the sky with this meaningless, dull orb. Suddenly it's flared up. The chaotic ocean has disappeared, and suddenly there's stars everywhere to be seen. And one of the key factors that happens at this point in time is that in looking up to Saturn, you get the effect of Mars between Earth and Saturn, and it produces what looks like an eye in the sky, basically an eyeball.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, Saturn is rejecting or ejecting a solid body, rocky body, from its interior as a result of the electrical stress that it is under from encountering the sun's heliosphere. And that ejects southward and settles between Mars and Saturn. And that becomes what would later be the planet Venus.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's fresh and new, it's glowing, it's in full plasma glow mode. And so effectively you have the pupil, the iris, and the cornea effect of an eye looking down on the planet. Now this is the most famous Saturnian symbol that you can think of. It is basically, you're describing a celestial version of what is called the all-seeing eye, or the eye of providence. And for anybody that's looked at a US dollar bill, you can see that eye sitting there on on top of that pyramid that they've got. You can also, I've noticed that the European Union, where you're sort of in that part of the world, they've reconfigured the European symbol to start looking like an eye. Have you noticed that? They have the circle of the stars, and then they have the oblong borders above and below. Gives a sort of a single eye sort of a look. Now, this symbol, there's plenty of other places. We know that this symbol was used in Egypt. We know that it's come down through the ages. And we know that people who use it because they know at a subconscious level, it's telling us these people are in authority. Because back in the Golden Age, when people looked at this celestial version of Mars, Venus, and Saturn producing this eye in the sky, it was associated with the great leap forward of civilization, the bestowing onto the earth of life, radiant life, and the coming of a concept called time. And time is the basis of all measure, and measure is the basis of all law. And this is basically where Saturn becomes synonymous with the great lawgiver, and anybody who is bearing that symbol in our subconscious, because of these events that took place in our subconscious, whether you're an Eskimo, whether you're a European, whether you're Maori down here in New Zealand, wherever, there is a deep-rooted psychological reaction that says, hey, that's somebody who's in charge.
Exactly. I fully resonate what you're telling me, Troy. And I also see that they use this kind of symbolism, and also in many logos in multinational companies. But that's a different story. So it's a subconscious message we can all read, but most of the people are totally unaware of this. But that's the message of we are in control, we are having power over you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now the reason that I'm postulating that happened, now you see, this eye first appeared at what I say is the beginning of the Golden Age, and the beginning of the Golden Age was a very chaotic time. So you can imagine for the people on the planet itself. Suddenly this thing flares up in the sky. It's just hung there before. They probably never even took notice of it before. It just was there all the time. Suddenly it reacts in the way I've described. It starts forming giant rings around it. The chaotic sea that encompasses the sky disappears, and there's all these bright lights that we call stars. And on top of that, there's one particular star that's encroaching on the system, coming from the west, that seems to be getting a little bit larger as people observe these sorts of things. Now, this is the environment that the Golden Age existed in at that time. When that particular star that's getting larger comes closer, it brings with it the planet Jupiter, and the electrical effects of the planet Jupiter arriving, which in itself, I believe, was also a sub-brown dwarf star in a binary relationship with the sun at the time. The electrical interactions between Jupiter and Saturn, combined with the sun's overall electrical effects, pushed Saturn from its position and pushed it out of the relationship with the planet Earth. Now, that is our doomsday event. That's the absolutely traumatic moment when Earth lost its first sun. And, you can imagine how terrifying that would have been to inhabitants that survived, and you can imagine the chaos on the Earth that would have been experienced. Now, what happens in the aftermath of that event, that doomsday event, is that people remember back to a time when Saturn ruled. And during that time, they experienced the coming of being able to measure, the rule of law. They were able to institute laws and have society. But it was also a time without want. The Earth was in a perpetual harvest. There was no seasons to speak of, and so on. After that time, suddenly mankind had to basically plan to feed himself. And while that isn't really a problem, we are a species that has become very good at survival in terms of that. There are a small group of us who would rather not do the work involved and would rather live the life that had been that kind of lifestyle under Saturn. And as a result, it's only a short jump from there that they realized that there were certain systems that they could introduce that would be adopted by the populace at large if they could show the populace that they had some kind of authority to run that system. That system was completely geared to their benefit, but the vast majority of people traumatized by what happened in the Golden Age were willing to accept the authority if these people had the right symbols. And this is what I believe is the beginning of what I call the Saturn death cult. This greed on the part of a small group of people that saw the opportunity to give themselves their own golden age at the expense of everyone else, when the true golden age was everybody benefited because of the bounty of Saturn. So, make sense?
Makes total sense. And then they start also to copy the behavior of the planets to marry young women, even sacrifice them.
Correct.
Yeah, all those things. And that's what you describe, and all those, ridiculous rituals.
Well, you see, it didn't happen exactly. It didn't happen overnight, because in the grand scheme of things, you get what's called the Golden Age followed by the Silver Age, which I identify with the period of time where the priesthoods, basically the priesthoods looked at the cataclysm that had taken place, and in an altruistic way, decided that they had, they wanted to help humanity by remembering the thing that was most great about the Golden Age, which was good laws, fair weights and measures, and basically a system where everybody could benefit. In other words, a legal system that gave justice to people. However, the technique by which they recorded this, the advent of writing, the ability to write, which prior to that time was probably more encoded through oral traditions, rather than through written word. But it was through the written word that certain people with a certain disposition, and it just comes down to sheer human nature, they would see that it would give them a certain amount of power over other people. And I think the rot started to set in probably a good 200-300 years after the cataclysms, when certain priesthoods started to basically corrupt themselves. And from that time on, it's been nothing but a battle against these small minorities who have learned the techniques for the manipulation of basically the psyche of the human species to their own benefit.
Exactly. Can we, in the last 15 minutes of this radio talk, Troy, look to the future? Because a lot of people talk that the Golden Age is coming back. Is it also what you think, or do you think it's a myth and was the golden age in the past? Can you share your vision of what is going to happen in the coming period?
Okay. Yes. I think once again it comes back to defining what a golden age is. In my mind, those who are part of what I would call the Saturn death cult, which is more a description of a culture rather than an actual organized entity, group of people or anything like that. So it's a culture of thought. Mm-hmm. It is this idea that I'm going back to a time when I shall not want of anything. I can just laze around and I can and everything will be provided to me, including my happiness. And there's no work involved and so on. There are a lot of people who, even in the more altruistic types of thinking, still see the golden age as a return to this time of a lack of want. I believe that a better way of looking at the original golden age is the idea that it was a time when when individuals throughout the human species could trust to engage with other people on an equal basis because they trusted a thing called law. Mm-hmm. And to me, it has always been the rule of law, which is the fundamental thing that makes humans great. And this is what I believe really defined the Golden Age, and this is what I believe is encoded in so many of the stone monuments that survive to us from this time, whether it's the pyramids, whether it's Stonehenge, whether it's the Mayan temples, what we see around us, and probably many more to still be discovered at the bottom of oceans, and places that we haven't sort of explored in detail. This is what I believe that lays waiting to be discovered. Now, against that is this small elite of people, or this elite mentality, which is a minority mentality, that wants to institute a golden age, and they kind of do this every now and then. You can see it. There was a period called the Gilded Age, which was the time from around about the 1790s through till the early 1900s, and it saw the rise of people like the Vanderbilt's family, the Rockefeller families, the Rothschilds, and so on. These people lived, wealthy lives without want that we cannot even begin to compare. I think Carlos Slim and Bill Gates vie to be the richest men in the world. Warren Buffett today. And, they have about $40 billion, I believe, to themselves. Maybe $60 billion, I think, was Carl Slim's amount. But, in today's money, John D. Rockefeller had $450 billion. That was the kind of money that was accrued to him at that time. So they had a sort of a small mini golden age for these people back then. And this is what they've been trying to perpetuate. So we're at a crossroads as a people on this planet where we could go into their idea of a new golden age, which is subservient slavery through debt for the benefit of a small elite group, where we believe that, that's the natural order of things because that's what we're told. Or I believe a new golden age is really a rediscovering of a equitable system of justice based on the rule of law. This is where I believe the battle is. And of course, in Saturn Death Cult, I believe the battle lines are drawn very much in the way we use money. I think money has become the ultimate system for slavery, but it is also a system that, if it is introduced into a society in a fair and equitable way, without interest, without a debt placed on it, then it basically opens all of those incredibly creative people that exist in the majority of people. It opens their potential for great achievements, and I think we're at that crossroads, quite literally in this decade.
Exactly. It's a pity, Troy, you live in New Zealand and not in the Netherlands, because I would really like to have you in my party, because that's exactly what we're saying, and we want to change the whole system. So it fully resonates, my friend. It's great.
Well, who knows, man? In about 3 months' time, I'll be in the UK, so we'll hook up then.
Oh, okay, maybe we can hook up. That's great, yeah. But I fully agree. The money system, that's where the war is now at the moment. When we look at the news media, it's all about the money system, and the war is hidden, of course. But when you can read the messages clearly, then you understand what's really going on. So it's fascinating. But it's up to us.
You see again, this comes back. Sorry?
No, continue, please.
No, I was just going to capitalize on what you were saying there, is that, the cosmology that I introduce as a background to where this money system's origins really come from, or the symbols that back the authority that the money system claims for itself, when you understand this cosmology, it gives you a tool to basically identify, to be perfectly honest, how pathetic the control mechanisms are that these people actually use against us. It frees you from doing that. And, I may be right, I may be wrong. There'll be all kinds of various degrees as to the actual history, as to what happened in terms of, the last 15,000 years on this planet. But if we can see where events in the past are affecting us today, I do honestly believe it frees us from the deep-rooted psychological controls that these people have used against us, particularly in the last 200 to 300 years. Yeah,
it's true. Totally true. Okay, let's a little bit of questions. We also have a chat, Troy, where listeners can ask questions.
Oh, okay.
Let me make a bridge first. Do you actually think that there will be a very drastic cosmological change in our solar system? Will there be a new sun entering, or will something go away, or what do you expect in that from the stars and the planets?
Right. The possibility of that happening is always real. What compared to sort of Hollywood films about, planets coming into the thing, the great thing about the electric universe model is that once you know how it works, you can see the warning signs for things happening. The outer planets will start to glow if we get a body big enough to come in. If we get, for instance, another sub-round dwarf sneak up on us, we will know about it coming in. There will be a flaring. There will be all kinds of electrical activity, in the same way that comets flare when they enter into the solar system.
Exactly.
And such, right? So in that sense, it's always possible that we could see that. We could even see Saturn or Jupiter reflare in terms of these sorts of ideas. But I have to say I am not particularly within my lifetime concerned about cosmological changes that may destroy the species. I might get wiped out in a tsunami or an earthquake or something like that. And to go a step further, I'm also very much an adherent to the expanding Earth concept of how planets form and so on. So I do believe that the Earth at this particular time is actually going through an expansion phase, that when it expands, it's not gradual, it goes in spurts and sort of growth spurts followed by long periods of calm, and then suddenly boom. And I think we're in one of those phases at the time. So we could see a lot of destruction, but I don't see a species-threatening destruction from a cosmological level.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing that. The question is related to whether we can see things in the universe. But let me first make a relation to, you talked about the brown dwarfs. We are not able to see them because they have some kind of shell. Within the shell, when you look outside in the ancient periods, it looks like a purple haze from within the shell. But from the outside, you cannot see it, like it is cloaked or something, like they use in the Star Wars films. The question from one of the listeners is there also, by your knowledge, a city on the moon which is not we cannot see, but it has some same kind of cloaking, or is kind of yeah. Do you think there is life?
Well, right, okay. The moon has always been problematic for me. I have to be honest in saying that if there's a weakness in my, sort of appreciation of Saturn theory, it is the role played by Jupiter and, of course, the arrival of the moon, which I believe is very recent in terms of its relationship to Earth. Mm-hmm. I'm of the opinion at this time that the moon was originally a satellite of Jupiter, and that we captured it in the chaos with the breakup of the Saturn system, particularly under the influence of Jupiter, and you got this mass, this whole Clash of the Titans stuff that comes down from mythology. That is my view at this particular time. I'm in a lot of contact with a gentleman called Ted Holden, and Ted is famous for having first pointed out he wasn't first guy, but he reintroduced the idea that the dinosaurs could not have existed in the gravity that we have today, and therefore at the time that they were roaming the Earth, it would have been a different gravity. Now, how this relates to it is that Ted believes that there were civilizations on other planets at about the time that we're talking these cataclysms took place. And there's a lot of evidence to show that what's called a splash saltation, that yes, life could have been introduced onto this planet through transmission between not colliding planets, but planets where their magnetic fields come into effect, and so on. We have Martian meteors and so on. I have to be honest that as far as a civilization on the moon, a city, I haven't done enough study. I'm aware of Richard Hoagland's theories. Mm-hmm. I'm aware of what Ted believes is on Mars, let alone on Earth, and so on like that. And I'm still in the phase of researching that sort of thing out. I don't discount it, and that might sound like a cop out, but it's quite, at the same time, I can't say yes or no for my personal self on that level.
No, but that's exactly the same position I have too. I'm open-minded about it, but I'd like to see some hard evidence before I jump to conclusions. So we'll
sure.
We have to wait and see what's true and what is misinformation about all this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Well, it was been a really honor for me to have you in the show, Troy, because you are so gifted to explain everything in an easy followable. Is that the correct word? It's easy to understand you.
Yeah.
And for the listeners, are you curious about everything that Troy has said in this radio talk show? Go to his website, SaturnDeathCult.com, where you can find a lot of information. What are you currently researching at the moment, Troy? What is your current interest?
At the moment, I am extremely excited about extra information on the physics of describing a polar configuration, which is the configuration I put Earth under Saturn, which most people think is completely preposterous. I've been extremely excited by developments in the use of diamagnets to levitate true magnets held under a giant magnet. So essentially, in a very quick description, you get a large magnet hanging above a small magnet, and I can't remember the name of the law now. Ersham's law, I think it is, says that you can't stabilize that magnet. But now they have found that if you put diamagnets buttressing the magnet that you want to levitate, and a diamagnet is a non-magnet that reacts against magnets. It's like graphite. Water is a diamagnet. Your actual human body is a diamagnet. Mm-hmm. You can actually stabilize a magnet so that it sits under a larger magnet. Now, essentially, to me, that describes the Saturn-Earth polar configuration. And of course, the Earth's crust, with its water, with its carbon, with its graphite, and so on, is a giant diamagnet. And of course, the Earth's interior is the magnet that is levitating in there. So at the moment, I'm looking at the physics and highly encouraged that we're finding a physics for this polar configuration, which is often the sticking point of the whole theory when it comes to this cosmology. So, stay posted.
Great. Yeah, to me it's also very fascinating to understand the true the essence of magnetism and the essence of electricity. To me, that is the true meaning of yin and yang, and everything is related to that polarity or the duality of those two magnificent forces, and they are always interacting with each other. Yeah. So that's and
that's the thing. If your readers, if your listeners go away with one thing, and that when they look at astronomy and what it says and so on, just always remember you cannot have magnetic fields in space without electricity. That's just a fact. You've got to have electricity in the first place, and that's the key to the electric universe model of the universe. If they remember that, then they will not be surprised as mainstream science seems to constantly be.
Exactly, that's the essence. Thank you very much, Troy, for sharing all this information with you. Probably I'll invite you back to this radio show because you have so much more
anytime
to tell. Yeah, and thank you also very much for getting up so early to be talking to us. Thank you, and to all listeners.
My pleasure, Johan.
Okay, great. And everybody who was listening, who's listened to this radio show or listening to the recordings of it, thank you very much for listening, and hope that you join the show again in the future. Goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Dit is Ergens Over Radio.
Een andere kijk op de wereld.
There's a reason for my teaching, even though I can't explain. More than a dream that you are reaching, more than a laugh that shadows all the pain. A special meaning in the thought of dreams, in the garden where a thought can blind me. 'Cause I am lost here, where it never gleams, where I found that I screamed so blindly, yeah. Until I rise up, fall down. Is this the reason that I can't feel the ground? Am I waiting for my tomorrow, or should I say goodbye? A purpose, 'cause I feel the same. And as I wait for my dreams to surface, as I wait I'm drowning in the rain. Just when I thought that it was over, I lost my grip and I hit the wall. A simple dream that I tripped over, now I have to wake up to my fall, until I